Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Mike Gibbs, and I'm here with Alonzo Coleman, and we're here to help you with your next cloud architect interview. And whether it's an AWS solution architect interview, a cloud architect interview, an enterprise architect interview, or honestly, any tech interview in your career, I want to help you get hired. I want to make sure that you not only get hired, but the more attractive you are to the employer on your interview, the more you will earn as well. So that's what we're going to talk about. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Gibbs. I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I've been in technology now for, well, actually more than 25 years. In fact, I've been an IT architect for over 25 years, either as a network architect, an enterprise architect, a business architect, you name it. If there's a role, I've actually done it. And I've been coaching others just like you to build their first tech job, whether it is in the cloud, the network, the data center. We've been doing it all. And I've got graduates that work at Apple and Amazon and Microsoft and Google and Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, JP Morgan Chase, you name it, any prestigious organization out there, I've helped people get there, and I want to help you. I'm also here with my esteemed colleague, Alonzo Coleman. Alonzo is not only an extremely good friend and an incredibly intelligent individual, he is an expert in marketing. And the interview, let's face it, is all about marketing yourself, setting the right brand and expectations even before you walk into that interview, and then selling yourself. So having a person with Alonzo's background, he'll also add so much to this conversation. Plus, he's a cloud architect. We trained him, got him a job on the cloud, and then I begged him to come back because I knew he would be so good for our students, and he is every single day. So we're here, and today we're going to talk about cloud architect interview mistakes. Some people would consider these things to be AWS interview tips or cloud architect career tips, or even when people, or even interview questions. And look, we're going to talk about some of the interview questions that are there, but imagine a world where you only practice a certain number of interview questions and then you get asked a different one. And that's why I don't like to do just cloud architect interview questions or AWS interview questions. I want to make sure that you're all prepared to show the best side of yourself in your career. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Alonzo, you don't want to talk about anything before we begin?
Absolutely, Mike. I just want to introduce myself. Thank you so much for the awesome intro, my friend. I'm just here to help. I really enjoy engaging. I was engaging with a couple of students earlier today who had they needed some advice. And being there and having them reach out to me is a humbling responsibility that I take seriously to help others be the best cloud architect and enterprise architect they can be. So very excited to have you all join us, and we're looking forward to answering your questions.
So we'll begin our discussion, and then please make sure you ask us questions because we want to help you, and we can't help you if you're there silent just by watching a video. So anything we can do to help you in your cloud architect career is really what we're looking to do. So I've now interviewed over 6,000 people during the course of my technology career. And, of those 6,000, I can tell you there have been some consistent mistakes that have kept people from getting hired. And I don't want you to make any of these mistakes. I want you to wow them on your interview. Now, when we hiring managers interview someone, we don't want them to be overly stressed, because if they're overly stressed, what happens is their brain won't be able to act the way it normally can. And we're not going to find out how good they are or bad they are. We'd like them to be a little stressed just to see how they respond under pressure, but not too stressed. So usually in an interview, we ask the first question, and it's really about, tell me about yourself. And, why is that question so important?
Hey, Mike.
Yes, Chris?
Hey, sorry. I just realized what time it was. I know I'm not supposed to be on here today, but I know you guys are talking about interview mistakes. The first thing I hope you guys talk about, or the last thing I hope you guys talk about, I know you got a whole list of everything that you're going to be talking about, but if you guys can talk about how important it is to actually be able to do the job that you want to interview for. I think that is a critical thing that needs to be talked about. Just because, in my experience as a hiring manager and conducting lots of interviews, and I know you as well, we've come across so many people that aren't ready to do the job, and I think that's something that a lot of people might be missing, and not realizing that it can be hurtful to them in the long term. So I just wanted to pop in. I know you guys are having fun without me. What?
And I think that's a good point, and we'll definitely get to it. But let's open with this. If you're going to apply for a job, you have to be able to do the job. So imagine you applied to be a lawyer and didn't go to law school and said, but I want to work as a lawyer. Well, clearly that wouldn't work out. So what Chris is saying sounds so obvious. But in many of the thousands of interviews we've done, people come to us without the capability, without the training or the ability to do the job. And the reality is some jobs can be taught on the job and other jobs cannot. You can't learn to fly a plane on the job. I'm sorry. You just can't. You can't be architecting the systems on the cloud or off the cloud if you don't understand what those systems are. So we're going to say that competency or the ability to do the job is required. And I'm going to leave it at that, because all the rest of the things we're going to talk about are things that keep people from getting hired if they're actually able to do the job. But I don't expect to go to NASA and say, I'm your next rocket pilot. And they're going to look at me and say, yeah, based on what? So
I completely understand. Hey, let me give a shameless plug. We've got a couple of resources for all of you. I don't know if Mike's mentioned it yet. Mike, if you already mentioned it, I'm going to mention it again. If you didn't mention it, I'm going to mention it now.
I didn't mention it. I was so excited to talk about interview things because I'm so passionate about it. So bring them up. Sure.
Okay. All right. See, there's a reason I got to pop in every once in a while. So I'm going to mention these things and I'm going to get back to work. By the way, if you haven't already, this is a completely off-topic discussion because this is about interviews. But since I'm working on it right now, let me tell you about the 50% off Enterprise Architect pre-sale that we've got going on. Our Enterprise Architect program will go live on Monday. I'm putting the finishing touches on it right now. That's why I'm not on the show. So if you haven't already, take a look at the 50% off pre-sale discount. Tyrone will put that link there in the chat box. Also, the more on topic, we've got a completely free winning the interview guide. Completely free. You don't even have to do anything. Just get the guide, read the guide, enjoy the guide. Completely free resource for you on how to win the interview. That is available for you as well. And then also next week, more on topic here, we've got a Secrets to Winning the Interview webinar that we're going to be doing as well. So I just wanted to pop those in here, let everybody know. I know I came in here with don't do this, but now I'm going to leave you with here's some resources for you. I'm not always a Debbie Downer. All right, Alonzo and Mike, I'll let you guys get back to your show. I'm going to go back to work here, get the Enterprise Architect program finished up. Talk to you all later.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
That's Christopher Johnson, our Chief Operating Officer. And because he worked in HR for so long, and because he's done so many interviews, he's an integral part to our actual interview training program. But let's talk about getting you hired and winning that interview on the assumption that you actually are properly trained and can do the job, because that's obviously critical. As we started to talk about from an employer perspective, we don't want you to be panicked in the interview. So we like to start the interview with an opener. And the opening question we typically ask is based upon the following things. We want to know who you are. We also want to know how you communicate. Can you communicate succinctly and effectively? Or are you going to be a babbler, which we'll talk about later as one of the challenges on interviews. And they're also trying to see if you know what they need because you did the research, and if you can persuade them why they need to hire you. So the first question is typically a tell me about yourself question on an interview. And that's the first question. And it gives us so much information. And in 90% of interviews, that's the first question, especially with the hiring manager. And you need to have an answer that you can realistically say in about 30 seconds in 90% of interviews. Like I said, 30 seconds. It's so common for an interviewer to ask someone, tell me about yourself. And 4 minutes later, they're still babbling. And from a hiring manager perspective, we're lost. And when the hiring manager is lost, all that goes through their mind, and I've spoken to thousands of tech executives and managers as well, as when's this person going to stop speaking? And instantly, the interview is over for that person, whether they know it or they're not. Now, the employer will go through the rest of the interview so someone doesn't feel like, all right, you spoke to me for 5 minutes and you kicked me out the door. but that's a big problem. So get something quick and easy. For example, I might say, hi, I'm Mike Gibbs. I'm an enterprise architect with 25 years experience designing solutions to solve customer business problems. I've designed billion-dollar architectures and consulted to the world's largest internet service providers, global banks, and healthcare institutions. I've trained thousands of cloud architects over the years. You see how quick that is? It's basically a why you, and telling them about why you could sell them and what you can do for them in that first question. So that's something I want to make sure you really get. Alonzo, how do you feel about the tell me about yourself question? You've been in interviews throughout your career. How many people asked you that question as the first question?
Oh, they've asked me countless times, and I laugh and I give myself a chuckle. Earlier on in my career, you know, I took it as face value to the demise of my opportunity. So understand that you are on display. Okay, you are performing, and imagine that they're imagining that you are performing the same way you would be in front of a client or in front of anyone that would provide any type of financial opportunity for the organization. They don't care about what you're doing or what you've done. They care about how you can equate your abilities, competency, foundational knowledge, and so forth, communication, soft skills, and apply it to their position, their scenarios, their problems. And once you're able to do that and learn how to do it well off the bat, you're going to be in a great space.
Yeah, so that's typically where we start. Now, the next thing is kind of a tricky widget. And the reason it's a tricky widget is people want to put a lot of things on their resume in order to get that interview. And I completely understand that. But if you can't explain everything on your resume during the interview is over and you won't get the job. So this puts you into a precarious situation of what do you do? Well, what you do is you highlight all the things that you're really good at on your resume, and you put down what you can do, and you show why they need you on that resume. And that way, when you get on the interview, and one of us asks you about something that's on your interview, you'll shine. So the biggest mistake is not being able to explain what's on your resume. So do two things. Only put things on your resume that you are good at, that you understand, that you're capable with. Because that way, when you're asked these questions, you're going to shine, as opposed to being asked the question and not being able to answer those. Now, why is this so important? Well, after speaking to thousands of executives and hiring managers over the last couple of decades, here's what they tell us employers want. They want someone that can do the job, someone that communicates well, and someone they can trust. And they're looking for someone that's energetic and enthusiastic about the work, someone that's emotionally intelligent to bring out the best in others, team players, and people that are willing to go above and beyond. But that third point that I talked about, can they trust you? So what do we employers typically do on a resume? We typically look for the most difficult thing that someone lists on their resume and ask that, tell me about this. So for example, many years ago, I had a network engineer come into me. They never worked at an internet service provider, and they talked about designing MPLS backbones for internet service providers. And that was the most complicated thing on their resume. So I asked them, how did you do it? And they couldn't answer the question because they never did it. And if they at least understood it, they could have answered the question, but they didn't have that either. So ultimately, the interview stopped right then and there. Sure, I answered some questions, but I couldn't hire them. And why? Because I couldn't trust them. So make sure that whatever's on your resume is truth in advertising. So if a company had an advertisement for a product and the product didn't work, you would feel robbed. Well, after speaking to thousands of tech people, executives, hiring managers, etc., and doing thousands of interviews myself, when I see something on a resume and I ask the person about it and they don't know what it even is, that feels like false advertising to me. How about you, Alonzo? Have you ever interviewed people and they can't even describe what's on the resume?
Yes, unfortunately I can. And it's a tragic scenario because overall, let's be honest, we really want to be hired. We want to be everything that organization desires, even if it's unknowingly non-relevant or if we flat out don't know it. So I tell you and be honest with yourself, because Mike and I, we both know I'm going to ask you stuff. It's not that I'm looking for you to educate me. It's because I already know the answer. I want to know if you know too, and how you're going to answer. Are you going to answer simplistically? can you apply that concept to business needs that we have? If not, it's over before it begins.
Exactly, Alonzo. Now, the next one, and this really gets so many people, is not the difficulty in explaining technology simply and easy. So, for example, we have to determine if you're competent or able to do the job before we can hire you. We can't hire someone without the minimum level of skills. But just having the skills isn't enough. So we're going to ask you competency questions, and we're going to ask you competency questions about technology. Compare and contrast the difference between block storage and object storage. And we need an answer to that, but the answer needs to be succinct. Now, no hiring manager wants to hear you go to the management console and you click these boxes. They want to know that you understand technology. So when it comes to explaining technology, typically put it in the form of what is the technology, how does the technology actually work, and why should a business use that technology to gain competitive advantage? So when people can hear you explain things simply, then they understand. What is block storage? Block storage is a type of storage area network. Block storage works by taking the data, breaking it down into blocks, and then storing it on that storage area network. Block storage is very unique because it enables organizations to decouple their server and their storage infrastructure, which means cloud providers or data center providers can literally add storage capacity on demand, and they can be used by every server in that organization as a virtual disk. Because it enables the decoupling of your server and storage environment, it can scale. It's an economical way of storage, and it even helps businesses on the backing up of their systems because all that's necessary is to back up the drives on the storage area network. See, that's the way you need to explain it quickly, succinctly, what it is, how it works, and why you can use it. Because when you do that, you show the employer that you're competent. You show them that you're capable. But if you start talking about commands, especially as an architect where you don't use those commands anyway, you're designing systems, you have to show that kind of depth. So be able to take a lot about the tech, summarize it very easily in a form such as what it is, how does it work, and why you can use it. Now, Alonzo, you've seen a lot of people present technology solutions to you on interviews. What are you hearing? Is it always easy to understand, or is it some kinds, really challenging to hear?
It's definitely both. I've had people who really provide a unique but very simplistic spin on technology. And then I hear other people, they go down a rabbit hole of complexity and confusion, and they end up inadvertently backing themselves into a corner to end up having me ask them questions. Well, what about this scenario? And the scenarios become more and more complex to the point where they are just tapping out and not having any response.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm seeing things as well. So one of the things that's really important on interviews is actually listening. Whether it's being given a competency question and listening to make sure you get all the information, or listening to the questions themselves and answering the questions people ask you. I've seen both. And these are one of the bigger cloud architect interview mistakes and solution architect interview mistakes is not answering the right question. If I ask someone, please tell me about block storage, what it is, how it works, why I should use it, what's going on architecturally at the level, and they say AWS has 4 versions of the storage, and they tell me what the speeds and specs are, they didn't tell me anything about block storage. They didn't show me any degree of competency. They showed me they knew a single vendor, storage, and marketing terms, not that how it works. So listening to the question. The other reason I say not listening is there are times in the interview you'll describe something to the client or to the potential person you're going to hire, the interviewee. And then they'll ask you questions about the things that you already told them already in the interview. Now, why is that a problem? Well, if I'm interviewing you, I'm just going to let it slide because I figure you're anxious and you may forget some things. But I'm not everybody, and most people aren't as cuddly as I am on an interview. I teach interviews. I've been teaching it for years and decades, actually. So to me, this is common. I understand people's anxiety, but the reality is, as an architect, or as a cloud architect, or an enterprise architect, or a solutions architect, I have to know that you can get the requirements from the client. Can you listen and can you hear? And if you can't listen, everything you design will fall apart. In fact, that level of communication skills of both speaking and listening is probably the most critical cloud architect skill. But listening is even more important, because if we can't hear what those executives are telling us about the business, we can't hear what the CIO is talking about technology, and we can't hear what the engineers are saying because we don't listen, everything falls apart. It's the old programming expression, garbage in, garbage out. So that's there. So if you ask questions of things the hiring manager already told you, in most cases, the hiring manager sees that you're not listening. And if you're not listening and not the kind of person that listens, it makes them harder for them to hire you. So I hope you'll understand that and that makes sense to you. Alonzo, what do you hear about? Do you think everybody listens, most people listens, or some people listen?
Some people, and the thing is that, are you hearing or are you listening? Those are two distinct things. It's like, okay, you're taking in the information. Are you disseminating? Are you understanding and having and building a communicative bridge between the two so that everyone walks away on the same page? Most people do not. And that's the sad part. Another thing that I think about, Mike, is that people listen to respond, not to retain knowledge.
Yeah.
So are you here to rebuff me? Are you here to add in your opinions? Or are you willing to come away or walk away from this particular instance while you're on an interview to let them know that you're a listener, you're understanding, you're even confirming what was already said, so that everyone gets a full scope of what you can do in any scenario. So understand that if I'm asking you, are you paying attention, or I'm giving you some nuance, I'm looking for a deeper response than just yes, no, maybe so. I need to see that if you're listening, you're retaining knowledge, and you're understanding how it's applicable in this particular role.
Yeah, and that's something that's there. Now, this one's going to shock most of you, but it causes people to lose architect positions, and it's trying to sound too techy. So I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, so let me explain it. Companies hire architects to basically design, present, and sell a solution to the client. So what they're looking for is someone that understands the technology, but not someone to do the work, but someone to be able to describe the technology and what the technology can do for the clients and lead a large team and basically sell something. So they're not looking for an engineer, they're looking for an executive plus a technologist, all in the same person. And a lot of times we have engineers, these guys and girls have built stuff for decades. They're really strong. And either they've built parts of the internet as network engineers, or they've been software developers and designed some incredible applications that we use every day that make our lives better. The problem is when you're trying to interview for an architect and all they see is engineer, they just won't hire you. Yep. So for people that have been in engineering for a while, we work with a lot of the work we have to do to get them hired as architects is teach them a new side of the world. And honestly, it takes just as much time for me to get somebody hired that's never worked in tech as someone that does work in tech, because it's just such a different job. Now, people that have worked in tech before are easier to hire, get hired, and they're also taking more, but it takes about the same amount of training to go from an engineering mindset to an architect mindset as it does to go from a different background and be an architect, because you don't have to unlearn and change your way of thinking. Both sets of thinking are important. It's just what it's for. So don't come across too techy. So if you've been an engineer before, don't babble in acronyms. Don't talk about how great you can code, because you'll never be doing that in an architect job. Don't talk about all your hands-on experience. Talk about what you've learned in technology and how you've built a depth of knowledge and how you can use that depth of knowledge to help clients solve their business problems by leveraging technology. That's the secret. So it's not like they're looking for a super engineer as an architect. They're looking for someone that's a cross between a really strong engineer and a sales rep. So if you can remember that, you'll be in a much better position on your interviews. And sadly, I've seen that tank some very good capable people's interviews.
You know what I think also, Mike, is key is don't use popular buzzwords. Mean what you say what you mean, okay? There's a lot of stuff that I've heard, in class, and, I'm definitely not calling anyone out, but I've definitely heard a lot of buzzwords when asking questions, particularly with people who may be visiting, and it just went over everyone's head. So be simplistic, be direct, focus on what you are trying to say and make sure everyone understands how you say it.
Yeah. The next one is not reading the room.
Yeah.
And this is something that most people do not do, but they should. If you're talking to someone on your interview, they asked you a question and you're answering it, and their body language opens up and they lean forward and they're happy. They love what they're hearing, keep talking. But if you're giving an answer and the body language starts to look like this, stop talking, for example. Or if there's 3 people in the room and one of them is looking at you, but the other 2 are kind of like this, make sure you address the other people's concerns. So read the room. If there's an opportunity for you to close on the interview and you read the room and you have the opportunity and the body language is open, go for it. If the body language is not open, don't push it. Read the room and take care of it. So, I've never been on an interview where I've never gotten the job, ever. But I've been on an interview when I read the signs to stop talking or change the topic. For example, if someone's feet are pointing towards the door, end that conversation immediately. So look at people's reaction. If they're nodding yes, keep talking. If they're nodding no, and crossing their arms, stop talking, change the topic, and go to something else. That's how you can steer the interview.
Absolutely, Mike. I just think I know there's a lot of moving parts when you're in an interview. Let's be honest, people are probably going in there regardless of how much you're nervous. You're probably eggshelling because you don't want to make the wrong move. You feel like it's going to interrupt and tear down the entire interview, but just relax. But otherwise, just read the room. Go in there confidently, firm handshake, eye to eye, never look down, always look up, show humility, but strengthen that humility, be able to communicate effectively. And this is just all a quick summary of what we've already discussed. And it's just really key to be able to do these things because it helps. The more your whole goal is, the more that you're around them, the more you share, the more you want them to like you. The more they like you, the less they're inclined to ask you anything that might disrupt that synergy that you all have. So come in there, you hit them hard, you hit them fast with what but you still contain yourself with a strong reserve strength to showcase what you know in the best light possible.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alonzo. The next cloud architect interview mistake I see is not showing it's not showing what you can do for them, but showing them what you want instead. So imagine this. Imagine you're now in a position to pay someone a couple $100,000 a year for a job. And that person says, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. Okay, that's person number 1. Person number 2 comes in. Hi, hiring manager, let me show what I can do for you. I can do this and this and this and this and this for you. Who do you think gets the job? The person that showed the hiring manager what they can do for them. Now look, there's plenty of time to talk about what you want. The more attractive you are to the hiring manager, the better the offer they're going to make you. And the more negotiation room you have, the more they like you. But you got to get the offer first, and you got to get liked first. So if you were on a sales call, you would show what's in it for the client, not that your big fat commission check that you desire. So when you interview on a job, show the client what's in it for them. And what can you do for them? Can you bring out the best in others? Can you get an enormous amount of work done? Do you have a special ability to sell and close big deals which they can use for revenue? What can you do for them? I've made sure to do that in every interview I've ever had for every tech job. And I've either gotten hired for the job that I applied for or given a better job than the one I applied for. And you can do the same thing too. Just think you're the customer. What would you want to receive? Lonzo, you've been in marketing, which is the resume business, and I understand you know how to sell too. So you want to go a little bit into that?
Oh man, Mike. One of the things that one of our students, Steve Chamberlain, mentioned to me, and it just brought me back to those old marketing days of You're not selling the steak. You're selling the sizzle. You're not selling the pin, but you're selling the memories, the things that you associate with. You're signing big deals. You're signing big contracts. People are showing your affluence and status through this pin, your shoes, your watch. You're selling these facets that cannot be quantified and that they gotta have. So it's all about your positioning. It's all about what you're saying. It's all about you being able to deliver and saying, I can do this better than the next guy. And this is the reason why. It goes back to the confidence, but it also goes back to you providing the delivery that you know that they need and can't live without. If you're in a mirror and you're selling yourself these awesome things, think about the one thing that you can't live without that you know is of great value and try to sell it to yourself. Would you believe you? So if you don't believe you, odds are no one will too. So you have to drive home those points, not only the value of the deal that you can deliver, that they're always conversing with vendors and prospective clients about, but how you can deliver that value like no one else can, and how you can deliver all of these wonderful projects within a great setting, being a team leader and being able to drive value, drive goals with people that you have no authority under because of your sheer personality. Drive home those things. These are the things that are selling points that say, okay, I'm excited about this person because they know what to do. They get what needs to be done and they're willing to do it come, Hades or high water. So make sure that if you're demonstrating your sales skill, be excitable about that product because you and yourself are a brand and you're actually a product of that organization you want to represent. Provide that value.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to get, well, I'm going to get into one of the more controversial topics, but it can happen. And then we're going to get into some other major ones. When you're going to a cloud architect interview, an enterprise architect interview, a solutions architect interview, or you're going for a CIO role or a CTO role, they want to see how you behave. And they'll typically take you to lunch. And when you go to lunch, there's a few things that are part of the etiquette. Know which fork to use, know which knife to use, for example. Know how to hold the fork and knife. I know these things sound basic, but do that. But also, they're actually putting you through a test. They're checking your manners. So don't order anything you would pick up with your hands, like a hamburger, even though I love hamburgers. But don't do that. It has to be something that you would use with a fork and knife. And here's what they're checking. A lot of hiring managers for an architect want to make sure you don't have a knee-jerk reaction to something.
Mm-hmm.
And in consulting, they want to make sure you don't have a knee-jerk reaction. They want to make sure you think about things. So when you go to a restaurant, try your food before you put your salt or your pepper on it. Yes. And here's why. And this is one of those hidden interview gems that for higher paying jobs, people always look for. They want to know if you assess if something needs something before you add it, or if you just go add the salt without even knowing. Because they don't want you making dangerous assumptions with your clients because you think you know or you've acted without getting to the full problem. Like the serverless advocate. I got a serverless solution for you, but what if it's not right? It's always right. So there are times when serverless is the best. There are times where it's not. And the key is you need to have the wisdom to know the difference based upon your customer's needs. So they're actually assessing this without asking it. Now, Alonzo, I know you've been to a lot of these kind of meetings. What other things are they assessing and looking at? What else are you looking for?
I am looking for, again, your posture, your etiquette, the small details that you may take for granted, chewing with your food and talking at the same time, chewing with your food open. Now, case in point, I'm from the big, great Lone Star state of Texas, where beef, steaks, ribs, and everything else are a strong staple in our community. However, if I'm in a business call, say, for instance, Mike hired me or is considering hiring me, I am not going to order the full rack of barbecue ribs, okay? It's finger food, okay? How am I going to shake his hands? I'm not going to lick my fingers. I'm not going to swab it all over the linen napkins. I'm not going to do all these things because I strongly believe that organizations want you to always represent them and move in a fashion that improves their position through their employees. I need to leave a place better than how I found it. I need to ergo an impression. So, Mike said, Don't throw salt and everything else on your food, because from a cultural standpoint or from a restaurant, if this particular person who invited you here, they may take offense to you putting zip sauce on a steak or A1 sauce when you haven't even tried it, when in fact it would actually insult the chef. So think about that. And this is a deep thing, if you have red wine with fish or you have white wine with steak, that's wrong. Okay. White wine always goes with seafood, and red wine, robust ones, always go with beefs and things like that. I know it seems petty, but they're watching. Think about that. Understand the difference of salad forks, where it's positioned. Because at the end of the day, think about it, everyone. You are going to be in the same room where multi-million-dollar deals are made, and your resilience, resources, the ability to sell this solution is going to be key, okay? Which is why we make so much money. We want it, great. That's wonderful. Everyone wants to make tons of money. But are you the one they want to pay? Okay. And why are you different from everyone else who wants the $200,000 position, who is going to be sitting in these rooms with influential people, who are going to be at these webinars and diamond star or diamond client events, where you may get iStock or a lot of these publications taking pictures? Do you have the right suit? Do you have the right stature? Are you talking with full and complete and sentences? Is your syntax correct? Are you using slang? If so, why? Who are you talking to? Do you know who they're influenced by, or who influences you all the way down? The wrong move could land you in a room the next day and saying they didn't like how you did X, Y, and Z. You're off the project. Off the project, off opportunities, damaged brand, no bonuses, no type of commissions, all because of a faux pas. It may not be fair. It may seem petty. It may seem very base, but it's true, because we are also executives and we have to look the part. No one wants and I'm sorry for hijacking, Mike. You know, I get on a tear. You think about a chessboard and you want that king and queen to be strong and well defended. But if the chess pieces are dirty or crumbled, you're not going to have that same opinion about something that should be held in high esteem. So it's all about your brand. If you all are a part of our body, I just had a brand class about 2 weeks ago. I highly encourage you to review that. We're going to have another one really soon. But Mike, that's my take.
We'll get back to it. Alonzo actually gave you some jewels. I actually, when I started to progress in my architecture career, I actually had to take a wine, learning how to pair wines with food. I actually, did some finishing school things as well. I even took golf lessons, because at some point in your career, that's really where you need to succeed, where the deals are truly made. So all good points. But you know what I look for when I take someone out to lunch? I like to see how they treat the people that work at the restaurant.
Yes.
I like to see if they're respectful. And
Yes.
that's the determining thing, because I don't care how good someone is if they don't treat others well. I just won't hire them.
And you know what? It could also flip as well. You could be a very, very sought after enterprise architect. Okay. And not only are you, they looking at you and how you present yourself, but you're also cross interviewing them as well.
Yes.
Think about your interviewer. How are they treating the staff? Did they leave a tip? I'm a strong proponent of leaving a tip based off of service. Okay. Not just because, but even then, poor service, you still leave a tip of a minimum of 10 to 15%. If you're really enjoying their service, 18, 20%. These day and times, to offset economical pricing, people do what they want. However, think about what they're doing. How are they acting? Because if they're treating the staff that way, odds are they're going to treat you that way too.
Yeah. And it's a double-edged sword, which is another reason on almost every interview I've had, I've either had a presentation, lunch, or both. That gave me good insight into how others treated people. So let's get to the next one. In order to get hired as an architect, you're going to have to give a presentation in front of a panel in most cases. And there's going to be some architects on that panel. There's going to be some business people on that panel, and you're going to have to give a good presentation. So Not preparing for a presentation for a cloud architect job and trying to make it up in the last 2-3 days before the exam, not good enough. You want to be an architect, you've got to have strong presentation skills. So if you want to apply for your next solution architect job, or your next cloud architect job, or enterprise architect job, or any pre-sales role in that matter, practice your presentations ahead of time.
Yeah, well said. So, say for instance, you're trying to propose or say something very important to someone, and you do not want to be misrepresented, or you don't want to stumble over your words. Everybody's done it. You probably have envisioned it in your mind, or you've gotten in front of a mirror to try to share some information that will greatly change the dynamics of a relationship. This is the same thing. You're changing the dynamics of your relationship from someone who you're just going to interview in front of and possibly never see again, or you very well may be working for them as early as 2 weeks from that particular interview. Okay. So think about what's important. What do you want people to remember you by? Your actions, your stature, your ability to communicate effectively, what you're wearing, how you're wearing, your hygiene, making sure that if you have facial hair, it's trimmed, it's uniform. If your hair is done, making sure that, and this is a key thing, making sure you don't wear any cologne or perfume. Okay, what smells good to you may not smell good to Mike. So leave an impression of who you are, not what you smell like.
Yes, absolutely. And the next one, we're all told we should ask questions at the end of the interview. We're all told that. But it does signal interest. But sometimes the questions people ask you kill the job.
Yeah.
For example,
Yes, they do.
I'll go back to what employers care about. They care about your ability to do the job and to do it well, the ability for them to trust you, your communication skills, so you don't make mistakes, your energy, enthusiasm, and passion for the role, your emotional intelligence to bring out the best in others, your ability to work in a team, and your willingness to go above and beyond. So when I ask someone, do you have any questions? And they say, how many weeks vacation time do I get? Interview's already over. It just ended. Even if there were someone you would hire, because you need to know the person's willing to go above and beyond. And that doesn't mean that they can't. But when you're trying to sell something, hi, I can work for you, but not here, 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 or here, you make it too challenging. So what you need to do is you need to wow them on that interview. And then when they make you the offer, then you can negotiate anything you want after they've decided to hire you, because you showed them how valuable you are to them. You showed them they need you. So be warmer and cuddlier and friendlier before they decide to give you a yes. And then afterwards, and you've proved your value, then you can ask for more. You want to touch on that, Alonzo?
Absolutely. No one wants to work. I don't, and I've had to manage people who were clock watchers. It's like, are you here to solve problems, or are you here just to get a paycheck? And if you are, there's plenty of other places that may want to hire you to just sit there. But I need problems solved. I need them done correctly, efficiently, cohesively, and within a certain time frame. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And considering how you're dealing with ambiguity and a lot of other challenges in cloud architecture, I don't need another problem. So what's going to happen? You're offboarded, or even worse, you're not even there before it begins, because understand that they're going to apply your behaviors right then and right now in that block of time to your overall career and how you're going to work with them. That's why we say all this over and over and over again. I believe we're just talking about just tell me about yourself. We're talking about being able to defend, like any dissertation as a doctoral, what's on your resume? Have you done it before? Can you explain it without lying? Are you able to understand how they're absorbing or repelling your information? Don't do it by babbling, and just talking just to talk. And also, one of the things that are important, Mike, is that if there is a space in there, let it happen naturally. Don't fill up every second of silence with something feeling like you have to say something. So be natural.
Let's talk about that one thing you said in a second, but I just want to tell you what kind of a question you could ask. You could say, Ms. Hiring Manager, Mr. Hiring Manager, could you tell me your goals and the company's goals? Because I would like to know that if I was a part of your team, I could help you all be more successful.
Yes.
Well, that is a question I ask for two reasons. It shows them that you want to help them, that you're in it for them. It also gives you the actual job description. Because, I've never seen a job description that was within 10% of accurate. And it's funny, I have a really good video coming out with me and the president of IT Excel in New York City talking about job descriptions being funny. But that's your real job description. Whenever your manager wants to get promoted, that's your job description. So you're going to find that. So, Alonzo, you mentioned a key point in there. I forget what it actually was. Do you remember what?
I know I threw a lot out there, so it's hard to say, but it's all about, you showcasing a lot of what we've discussed, especially when it comes to showcasing how you deliver value, Mike. We're talking about vacation time. We're talking about all these benefits that I can receive or whatever.
Yeah.
You got to be able to show altruism, the wills and wishes of others over the wills and wishes of yourself. And being able to showcase that by delivering or sharing, this is what I can do for you. It's like, this is like, okay, this is a highly sensitive, chaotic project. Let's look at it this way, Mike. We've got a huge mess of an environment, and they have money to burn, but they have little time to burn it, and they need results fast, which I got to fly out. Mike, I got to meet Mike somewhere in Morocco. Okay. And I know that I have family, I have everything else, but they are able to afford, I'm able to make concessions to do what I need to do. Are you going to tell them no? Or are you going to say, okay, I got to be with this company in great times as well as pressure and anxiety filled times, because overall I want us to win. I don't want to win by myself, because I can get there fast, but it's not going to be far. Okay. So think about what you're willing to do to roll up your sleeves, showcase that you're willing to understand, like, Mike, I want to know what your goals are. I understand that you have to not only focus on what the team needs to do, but I need to understand what you want to do and how you need to get there and how I can provide my expertise and support to make that happen. I want us to be successful, especially you as our leader, to drive results, show the organization what we can do, and I want to be there for it to help you make it happen.
Yeah, and that exactly what we were talking about. So, the next one is the etiquette of everything. So I want you to think about the difference between low-paying jobs and high-paying jobs. I also want to talk about the difference between a $200,000 architect and a $1 million chief architect. There's very subtle differences. Here's the differences. One is business knowledge. But the rest of it is actually executive presence, and it actually has to do with your etiquette and your soft skills and your finesse and your manners, all those other little things that are so small. But you give me an architect that makes 150, you let me tune those little things, and they're earning $500 or $400,000 or $500,000 a couple of years later, and I've got lots of examples of that. So it's just that stuff. So, read a book on how to be a lady or how to be a gentleman, whatever is appropriate. Really get used to the etiquette. And part of the etiquette is sending a thank you note after an interview. Now, why, as a hiring manager, do I actually care about that? If it was an engineering job, I'd care a lot less than if it's an architect job, and here's why. For the engineers, I need to know that they are good at that tech and it's their life and they love it. And engineers are very critical people, because without it, we'd only have pretty pictures of the architects drew. So I understand that those engineers are important, but they need to show that they can do the work. As an architect, a client comes to me for consulting advice, and I design a system to improve their business performance. And in order to do that, I might need to sell $1 billion architecture. And I've helped close $1 billion architecture in my career. And I've done hundreds of millions of dollars of architectures per year as in my career. And that's just part of it. But in order to do that, you have to have the finesse. You have to have those social graces. And one of those social graces is actually knowing to write a thank you note and respecting the interview for their time, that you appreciated the opportunity, that you're willing to follow up, and you're taking that last opportunity to sell yourself. that sets you apart from others, even though it sounds so trivial. It also gives you a lot of information for the negotiation later. If you send a thank you note after the interview and you get back inside of 5 minutes, if somebody gets back in you with 5 or 15 minutes, then they really liked you. And if you send that and they don't respond, chances are you're not going to hear from them again. And that's okay too, because you can continue your job search to somebody else that does. So you're getting immediate feedback. You don't want to ask, did I do a good enough job? Or what is it going to take from you hiring me? Like, what's it going to, like someone selling a used car, what's it going to take to put you into this car today? I mean, you can't do that, but you can get a lot of information, a lot of intelligence through these following actions.
Yeah, and I definitely would want to address, Igor, no fragrances, because fragrances are used to attract someone that you want to be romantically involved in. So smell goods they have no bearing in that particular environment. You want them to know your qualitative and strong business and technical skills as well, not for anything else. So look at it this way: do you want them to be known for, oh, they smell good, but they can't do the job, or you didn't have a fragrance at all, and you're going to be memorable because of your ability and the possibility and potential of you earning and providing great value for the organization.
And let's take it from a different perspective. Here's the other reason why. So it's not that a fragrance is good or bad per se. Smelling good is always a better thing, but not everybody likes all fragrances.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like not every person likes to eat souvlaki for dinner like I do. So when you put on something, 50% may like it and 50% may dislike it. And you don't want someone to dislike you on any silly basis like the cologne you wore. So clean, fresh, suit pressed, no wrinkles on it, shoes polished, belt polished. And even if you don't have a lot of money, you can still polish your shoes. And that's the thing. So it's the attention to detail on the polishing of the shoes that make you look like you put some time, effort, and thought into going there, which shows respect for them and respect for their time. So a lot of that's also respect. So, we covered a lot of things that are the most common mistakes I've ever seen. There's actually another one, and this drives hiring managers crazy. So if I were to ask Alonzo a competency question and he can't answer it, or gives me a babbling answer, which shows he doesn't know, he says, "No, Mike, I really get it. I'm certified." Well, he already proved to me that he doesn't know the answer. So trying to act like he knows the answer not only is an insult to my intelligence, but it's worse than that. It shows me he doesn't know what he knows, and he doesn't know that he doesn't know, and he just found out he doesn't know something, and he's not open enough to admit that he doesn't know, which means he'll never learn and never get better. So please avoid that one.
Right. Now apply that to a client that is definitely a strong proponent in their annual earnings. This company generates or provides us $375 million annual. And you start lying to them, promising things, or leading them down a path of deception. It gets up their chain of command to their business, and outside of contractual obligations, they pull their entire portfolio away from that company. You're not going to be there.
Yeah, so let's get to some questions. But before we do, it popped up on the screen, so I'll remind you. If you were looking to get your first cloud architect job, we've got a free ebook in the link in the description below and the chat box. And this is going to tell you every skill you need to get your first cloud architect job. On Thursday, we have a webinar on how to become an enterprise architect. And come and join us. We'll tell you every skill necessary for the enterprise architect role. It's what I love and how to get there. And, we also have a free document for you on winning the interview. An interview is an opportunity. When you get that opportunity, you want to capture it and win, not let it get wasted. And the more likable you are, the better you do on the interview, the more your worth is, the more employers are going to be willing to pay you, and the more you can negotiate after that. So, free interview guide there. Go gather it. And then let's ask your questions. We are not scary people, Alonzo and I. We're soft like cotton. So ask us your questions. All we want to do is help you build your cloud architect career, enterprise architect career, AWS solution architect career, Azure solution architect career, any career you want in tech.
Well, you'll know, okay, from Diggleman, always great to see your questions. How do you display technical competence while also being concise?
Diggleman is the way you frame it. So, Alonzo, I'm going to ask you what is S3, but before you answer it, I want you to answer it like a lot of people have done when you've interviewed them, and I'll answer it the correct way.
Well, S3 is actually an AWS object storage application that you can use across any environment.
Okay, so nothing in there, no substance in there. And that's the majority of what you get. Now, I don't know if he knows anything about object storage. I just know that he knows the AWS brand and the marketing names they called it. Now, if he said something like this: object storage is a type of storage area network where the data is taken down as data and broken down into objects. Now, when the object is written to the storage, it creates a little metadata, which is data about the data, and it shows how to point to the data in something that looks like a database, which is why your data is so easy to find on object storage. Now, if he then said object storage is useful for write once, read many times, and the reason it has to be this way is with object storage, anytime anything is touched or modified even a little bit, it creates new versions. So without, if it was used frequently, it would just create too much data and it would be there. Object storage cannot be mounted like a typical hard drive, meaning it can't be used by the server, but object storage is very useful for software distribution, for example, video content distribution, photography distribution, and backup and storage. That's why businesses love object storage. Dingleman, I showed you what object storage was in about a minute or less. But I explained it in a level of depth that there's no one here that doesn't think that I know object storage, because I do know object storage. So what is the tech? How does the tech work? Why should you use it? And that shows me clarity very quickly.
From Igor, how important is formal education to find a job? I heard that it's possible to get a specific formal education.
Okay, so I'm going to reread that because Alonzo's voice cut out midway through. How important is formal education to find a job? You have heard it is almost impossible to get jobs without specific formal education. Well, Igor, good news. 54% of organizations that are out there dropped college degree requirements, and they don't care. Now, we're not talking about little mini mom and pop shops. We're talking about tech giants such as Microsoft, IBM, and Google. They no longer have degree requirements for most positions. So 20 years ago, Igor, it'd be very hard to get a good job without a college degree, but most businesses have dropped caring about degrees and they've dropped caring about certifications. They care about what you can do for them. And here's the thing. It used to be that when you got out of college, you got a real education, but sadly, people are graduating school without the skills necessary to be hired, and companies are saying, we need people that can do things, not people that have fancy degrees. So look, I have multiple degrees, multiple master's degrees. And you know how many times in my almost 30-year tech career someone asked me about them? Once. And it was a job I told them I wasn't going to do. Once. How many times did someone ask me my GPA? Never. How many times did anybody ask me about a certification other than the Cisco Certified Internet Expert? Never. They care if I can actually do the job. So, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's what we were actually referring to. It's not your formal education, it's what you can do for them. So, if you can show people you can do it, if you can communicate, and if you can actually do it, that's there. I remember 20 years ago, I worked with this guy, Ted K. I don't think Ted even finished high school. He was this rough around the edges engineer, smoking in the office when nobody was looking. And let me tell you, he was one of the best engineers I have ever met. His ability to just pick up a book and master Linux overnight, his knowledge of routing and switching, his knowledge of network troubleshooting, I felt like there was nothing this guy couldn't do. One of the best people I've ever worked with and ever, but he did not have that education.
From James, Mike, is it strategically correct to be confident and answer the hiring manager's question? What are your salary expectations? Can you propose the best action to take in this situation? Thanks.
Yes, James, don't answer that question. And I'll tell you what the saying said. Here's the thing. If you actually answer it, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to anchor your salary too low, or you're going to price yourself out of the market before they decide whether to hire you. So you can say something like, actually, I'm mostly looking for the right role for me. Let's talk about the role. Let's see what I can do for you. And if we come to an agreement, then we can discuss salary. That's the way you dodge it. You don't provide that information in a confident way because you will destroy most of your opportunities. I will tell you that in my first job I actually did, I met with a gentleman named Devendra in New Jersey. And we're going back to, oh my God, in the late 1990s. And I didn't know this because I had come from healthcare, and healthcare was much more open and honest with salaries. And Devendra said, Mike, what are you looking to earn? And I told him $70,000 a year, and he smiled. And then he interviewed me. And after the interview, he said, Mike, I really like you, but I've got a problem with you. You applied to be a network engineer. He said, you're not a network engineer. You're a senior network engineer, and I have to pay you more than what you actually asked for. I hope that's okay with you. And of course I was happy. Now, he said, even at this, I hope to keep you more than a year. 6 months later, I got a salary that doubled my previous job, and it was over. And I took that job. People came and searched for me. So the key is never nail down your low salary ahead of time. Most people aren't as decent as Devendra would. Try to push that off if you can. Now, if they say, I need an answer, pick what you think you can earn based upon what you think you can do for them. Not what you think you can deserve, the value you think you can provide them with your current skill set.
Well said, Mike. From Richard. But Mike, I think the original question was about S3. Can you choose to ignore the actual question?
Yeah, Richard, actually the question I asked Alonzo was what is object storage? Maybe I said what is S3. So if they asked me what is S3, I would say S3 is the Amazon branded version of object storage, and then talk about the same object storage question, but I wouldn't go back into anything else.
Please forgive me, Sharon. I really want to know how to defend this statement. Quote, cloud architect needs to know a programming language, unquote, but want to mention this statement is always made by developers working in the field. Thank you.
Okay, so first thing I'm going to say is, do you know what a physician does for a living and everything they do in and out of their job? Unless you've been a physician, I know the answer is no. So don't ask a nurse what you have to learn to be a doctor. Don't ask an engineer what you need to be to learn a doctor. So a developer has absolutely no idea what an architect does in their life because they're not architects. Now, the reality is this. I don't code, and I've been an architect for 25 years. So your defense to them is, I'm an architect. I design the entire end-to-end system, which means I have to find the organization's strategy for their business. I have to understand their business processes and how to re-architect those business processes to optimize their business. I have to understand how to analyze all of their infrastructure, not their code, all of their infrastructure, their networking, meaning their routers, their switches, their wide area network. You have to understand the servers and the compute and the server virtualization. You have to understand all of the storage area networks. You have to understand all of the applications that businesses use. You have to understand databases, next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, VPN concentrators, and other forms of remote access. You have to understand zero trust and defense in depth. You can't get in the weeds on learning programming. It's not your job. You're not allowed to touch the technology if you're an architect anyway. If you work at AWS or Azure or Google and try to touch your customer's technology, they will fire you in a second. So I don't think you have to care what developers say in the field. You know, I used to practice internal medicine. The gardener that comes to my house is a really fine gentleman, but I wouldn't ask him what he thinks about my ability to practice medicine because I've never been a doctor or a nurse practitioner. He's never seen me. So I wouldn't worry about it at all. You don't need to defend yourself to developers. They need to defend themselves to you why they think you need a skill for their job. You need an entirely different set of skill. And no, I wouldn't worry about what the developers think because that development is only maybe 3% of all the tech things that you need to know, and you've got to know a lot of business things. So you can say, that's why we have developers to do that.
Yeah, I always find that interesting, Mike, is that when people say that architects need to get on the command line, but I'm like, okay, why would there be such a tremendous amount of redundancy with the developers, programmers, and cloud engineers? Who's leading the discussion from a business perspective on how to drive value? None one knows how to do that, and they don't have the answer to that. So I said, I submit respectfully that, I don't agree with that, because 50 business and tech for cloud architects, 80-20 for engineers. So the closer you are to the money, are you going to be in meetings talking strategy, or are you going to be on a command line by yourself? That doesn't make sense to me. From Uchenna, when starting your journey into cloud architecture, after garnering the theoretical knowledge, what do you advise one does to get hands-on competency? Because it seems like you already need competency to get an architect position.
Uchenna, let's talk about this. You need competency to get any position. I can't hire you as a physician if you don't know how to do the job. I can't hire you to fly an airplane if you can't do the job. And I can't hire you as an architect unless you can do the job. So you need competency. Now, having said that, Daniel Bosu, no experience, 20-year-old, hired by JP Morgan Chase. We trained her. Jennifer Ema, mental health tech, never worked in tech, hired by JP Morgan Chase. Wallace Agana, another fine individual, was a sales rep hired by JP Morgan Chase. There's a reason I'm going down this path. Yvonne Tamba, 24 years old, hired by AWS with no experience. So it has nothing, and I could go on for hours, but it has nothing to do with your hands-on experience. Now, next, architects are not a hands-on position. We are not allowed to touch our clients' technology. So please do the following. Please get to how to get your first architect job document, which we'll put in the chat box so you can learn the role. Here's what the skills are you need. You need to be able to design a solution, present a solution, and sell it back to the customer. We never touch the technology. I care about you as an architect when I hire you as your ability to design something inclusive of the network, the data center, the cloud, the wide area network, for example. So let's talk about the real hands-on experience for an architect, not the hands-on experience for an engineer, because I don't care, Uchenna. I just don't care if you touch the tech. I care if you understand how it works. Please, I want you to understand the difference. And then I'll actually get to the real hands-on experience that we're going to talk about. I'm going to tell you how to get it. I could teach you these simple commands. You could type on a Cisco router, and this is hands-on experience. Router BGP 65312, neighbor 192.168, remote AS.1.1, remote AS 65313. That's hands-on experience, and that will give you nothing to design an architecture. And here's why. I give you BGP commands. I did not teach you how BGP operated. I didn't teach you how BGP finds a neighbor. I didn't teach you how BGP selects a path. I didn't teach you what messages it sends. I didn't teach you the BGP states. All I taught you was hands-on, which means nothing when it comes to architecture design. So keep that in the back of your mind. You need to know how it works, not how to do it. Now, secondly, we actually teach our clients hands-on architecture. And what is hands-on architecture? Hands-on architecture is asking the client about their business goals, their business pain points, and their business challenges. Hands-on architecture is asking the right questions, the tech questions and the business questions. Architecture is understanding the organization's org chart, understanding the business processes or how that business actually operates, and being able to design a future business solution around that. Architecture is then building the team of all the people that you need and leading that team to come up with design, the developers for the software development piece, the DevOps engineers for their piece, the big data architects for their piece, the AI architects for their piece, the IAM architects for their piece, the security architects for that piece. Then it's about creating the architect documentation and giving the architect presentations and selling and closing the deal. That's hands-on knowledge. So you got to go to a place that's going to give you that. Now, we have a training program for that, but that's the only way you're going to do it is by doing these things, giving presentations, writing thought leadership documents, and doing all the other things that architects actually do. So I think that's what I'm really trying to show you. It's not about hands-on tech experience. I don't care if you can configure the stuff on the cloud or not. You're never going to do it, and you won't be allowed to. I care about your ability to design it, your ability to think holistically, your ability to select the appropriate technologies to solve the customer's problems, and your ability to integrate the technologies. Your ability to know that when you're on AWS and you've got a security solution, it's not just AWS. You're going to be coordinating Palo Alto and Fortinet and Microsoft and AWS and maybe Snowflake and a whole bunch of other things. So that's the thing. But that's why we have a 700-hour training program and not a 20-hour certification program, because you have to have that experience. That's why we create internships for every client that comes on for us, where they have a job title and experience so they can do architect work. But no, you have to be competent for any job to get it. So it's not about your hands-on practical engineering competency. It's about your competency as an architect. If you want to add to that, because it's a great question.
I thought you answered it perfectly. It's just being able to showcase that you're not, understand that you're not never going to be on the command line physically doing this. You're going to be designing it using certain software and on presentations, but you're going to be talking and communicating in meetings about what these solutions are. So focus on that business side, understanding the competency, great, because you got to communicate these ideas to the engineers and so forth, and to the audience of customers and clients about solutions, challenges, and how their options will affect their bottom line. But overall, focus on that competency.
Good questions.
Elijah. Hello, Mike. Quick question. I am reading Internet Routing Architectures, Bassam Halabi's.
Good
that
book.
you recommended within the program. Great choice. What is your best advice to link this book to the program? The book is awesome or great.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think they're probably trying to associate what nuggets can I pull from Bassam Halabi's book that are relevant to the program. That's my take.
Elijah, if that's what you're asking, we'll answer that. So in our program, we cover BGP, and Bassam Halabi also covers BGP. But all the things he talks about are all the things that you need to think about in BGP. When you think about cloud computing, and you think about things like Cloud Hub or Transit Gateway, they're kind of almost identical to the route reflector that Bassam Halabi talks about in his book, the RFC that described the BGP specification. When he talked about ways to create eBGP multi-hop when you've got multiple connections to a neighboring router and an exterior BGP, you might want to use something like that when you're connecting to a cloud provider as well. You know, when he talks about the communities and what you can do for those communities, you can think about how you would leverage those communities potentially to not become a transit autonomous system between, say, two clouds if you didn't want to. So everything in that book is completely appropriate to cloud computing if I answered the question you're actually looking for. But I love the book. And that's the kind of thing that you stay with you for life.
From Kevin, how would you sell or prove to the hiring manager that you understand what is in Bassam Halabi's book?
Well, when you're asked questions, how you answer them is going to be there. Now, no one cares that you know Bassam Halabi's book. People care, do you know BGP? And do you know how to use BGP for traffic manipulation, security, and traffic engineering? That's the real question. Now, I could ask you a simple question like how BGP selects a path. And you would say, first, it uses the weight in the specific environment. Then it looks for the local preference. Then, if the local preferences are the same, we look at the path that's chosen by the shortest AS path. Or if AS paths are the same, then we look for the route that comes with the lowest origin code, meaning IGP is less than EGP, which is greater than incomplete, for example. And if all is the same, then we look for the multi-exit discriminator, the lowest met, etc. And that's showing that you understand how BGP selects a path. So keep that in the back of your mind. But it's very easy. If I ask you a BGP question, I'm not going to ask you a question that's quite that simple. I might say you connect to 3 different internet service providers. What options do you have not to become a transit autonomous system? And right in there, you can think of whether I do route filtering, whether I have a community sent to me and I tag that community as no export. Do I use the no export community? It's the analysis of what you've been there. Because his book is really about architecture, not engineering. So it's all about, designing the system. So it's easy to prove knowledge when you understand. Very easy. But that comes out when they speak to you. And it comes out when you don't. For example, I'll give you a fun test. We'll see if I can remember it. It's been 25 years, okay? Alonzo, how does blood circulate through the body?
Generally, I'm sure that the heart has a lot to do with how it's pumping blood through the system. Other than that, I'm not a medical professional.
And okay, so I'm going to give you the competent answer to show how you demonstrate it. Well, Alonzo, let's all start where the blood comes from. The blood leaves the left ventricle and it goes out the ascending and descending aorta. Now what happened is that blood then goes through those main arteries to smaller arteries to micro arteries called arterioles. And at that point, that's when the oxygen comes out of the blood and carbon dioxide starts to build up. Now what happens is those little arterioles come with something called the venule, which is called microvein, which then goes into main veins, which then go into big veins like the inferior vena cava, which then distributes the blood to the right atrium of the heart. Now, then it sends it blood, and then it comes back via the pulmonary veins into you get the point. But the point is you can know that I know it by the way I describe it. And you can tell when someone doesn't know it by the way someone else describes it. I know Alonzo didn't practice medicine in his youth, so I asked him that question intentionally to show the way a normal person would answer it versus someone that actually knows. That's how you do it. And we had some fun with it.
From back to Igor. I heard that in the UK, I need basic math and English, GCSE from the UK, and I do not know what I think about that. I do not know what to think about that.
Well, generally speaking, if you're going to work in a country, you have to master the language in that country. Igor, your language is a lot better than you think it is. And in reality, there's no good job that you can do without basic math. So, yeah, basic math, I would say, is there. Because we're always going to have to calculate percentages, whether it be a percentage of a discount, whether it be percentage of a virtual machine utilization, a link utilization. Now, there's no fancy math in what we do, but there's math in it. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. You have to be able to understand basic math and speak a basic language. When I go to Greece, I speak to people in Greek. When I go to America, I speak to people in English. Well, I should say American. And I actually changed the English that I use when I go to England versus when I'm in the US. So people don't need a translation between my American English and true English.
LinkedIn user. I graduated in computer science May of 2023 and want to become a cloud or an architect. What's the fastest way and the most efficient way? I'm still looking for an entry role, so I'm open. Thank you so much. Kevin, your insights have been very helpful.
So the fastest way to actually become an architect is to probably take our architect program. But let me give you some advice of why I would either become an architect or something else. I hate to say this, but there's no entry-level jobs. There's just none. And here's why. What did people used to do as entry-level jobs? And that's okay. You can get a much more senior role, which will pay you double or triple than your entry-level role. And I didn't start out at entry level, and none of my students do, and you don't have to either. So let's talk about what you need to be. You first need to find the exact career you want. And then you need to learn the exact skills for that career. Technical, and then you need to learn the non-technical skills. So come to our Enterprise Architect webinar on Thursday. It's free. You can ask us questions face-to-face, and I really do want to help you. But here's why there's no entry-level jobs. We used to have people rack and stack servers in the data center. That was an entry-level job. Or we'd have like a cloud admin or a network admin or a Linux admin, and they would just type basic commands on the systems each time. There's no need for us to hire them anymore. Here's why. In cloud computing, a DevOps engineer can spin up a Terraform script in an hour, and truth be told, they could use AI to write that Terraform script in most cases and get them 90% there, and that could do the work of 15 or 30 entry-level people. So there's just no need for them. The other problem going on, which I'm sorry you're fighting against, is the average person when they graduate college sticks at a job for 6 months to a year. Now, the problem is, if it takes an organization 8 months to train you, and then you go somewhere else, you've just become their competition. So companies are not keen on training their competition, and they have no budget for this. The third is AI can do now more than what most entry level can be with greater accuracy and no cost. So a couple of years ago, if you look on our channel, we talked about why you should not train for entry level roles. Now, good news, you got a degree and you know what you want to do. So go out there and train it. My first job, they wanted 10 years experience and I had 0. So it's not about your experience, about your competency. So figure out exactly what kind of architect. You want to be a cloud architect, an enterprise architect, a network architect, a AI architect. So first we need to get that, and then we need to zero in on your skills, but you can do it. 24-year-old Ivan Tamba, hired by AWS after our training, is his first job. Jordan Kitko, another nice kid, about 20 years old, really great guy. And, we got him hired at AWS, again, with no background. And there's a Coyote, another college student, hired by AWS as an architect, as his first job after our training. But you can do it. It's not hard to get these jobs, but you have to have the right skills. So find out what exact type of job you want, and then get all the training. Now, please, I beg you not to focus just on the tech. I beg you. And here's the reason why. If you're going to interview 2 people, and when you're new, you're probably not going to be as good at the tech as somebody that's got 20 years experience, who you could actually be competing with, because some of them are still entry level, even after 20 years, if they don't move on to mastery. So what do employers have to look for? So when I give an interview, or a tech interview, and anybody else does, 50% of that person's interview score is how good they are on the tech. 50%. So it's a lot, so you've got to be competent. But here's where you win. The other 50%, which is your communication skills. So really focus on your communication skills, and that's why we train it so heavily. Focus on your emotional intelligence and how to have those difficult conversations and bring out the best in others in a positive way. Focus on your presentation skills so you can present yourself to that hiring manager on that interview and wow them with your ability to communicate. Show that employer your energy, enthusiasm, passion, and desire to learn to help them, and you'll win. Show them that you're not flaky, that you're willing to go above and beyond when needed, and be there, and you'll get great jobs. So congratulations on graduating. Start focusing yourself on bigger roles and get the correct training. Look, if you wanted to be a cloud architect, I'd love to train you. If you want to be an enterprise architect, I'd love to train you. And we've got a pre-launch program that's on sale for 50% off now that starts in a few days. But if you want to be a different kind of architect, and that's great, do the following. Make sure you get the required business skills and the tech skills. Because you can go all the tech boot camps you want and have all the tech certifications you want, and no one's going to care to be an architect. They care if you've got all those abilities to be able to understand a business, understand their requirements, and design systems to impact them. But I've gotten people in every country in the world you can think of, architect jobs without experience, and you'll do great. Just focus on those things.
Great response, Mike. Derek. Mike, you are a great architect and can design with a pen and a napkin. In class, you design MS PowerPoint and Word. Is that what is used in an actual job when documenting architectural designs?
Derek, it brings up a lot of great questions. So there's probably about 4 or 5 ways that architecture designs are done, and your level in the company will determine what that is. Most of them are done, I'd say about half of them are done with a drawing program such as Lucidchart, Draw.io. We used to use Microsoft Visio, and they're there. Now, I'd say about 25% of all enterprise architecture documents are just done in PowerPoints, like I use, in boxes and squares and circles. And that way, they're vendor agnostic and they're easy to understand. Now, when you reach an elite level, like the enterprise architect, or a distinguished architect, or a principal architect, which is mostly what I've done, I would either draw a PowerPoint thing or I would draw something on a piece of paper, take a photo of it, and I would send it to the graphics team. And the graphics team would look at these beautiful things. So if you actually go to the Microsoft website and look at their architecture, things that they put together, they're these beautiful things that are done in, say, Adobe InDesign. And that's really where all my architectures get translated to. They get put in Adobe InDesign, and they're beautifully formatted, and there's graphics, and there's tables, and there's official numbering. So I'd say 25% go that way, 25% are PowerPoint drawings, and about 50% of the standard Draw.io, Lucidchart. And there's probably still some Visio users out there, although I don't know if it's a new product anymore, like still supported. It's a great question.
Back to Diggleman, is 2000K a fair compensation for the New York City area as a security architect?
It depends on how good you are. So I know security architects in New York that earn as little as 200, 180 to 200. And I know good security architects in New York City that also earn 500, but it's all amazing what you can do for the customer, how good you are. And then it's not just how good you are, it's how likable you are. And at the end of the day, it's about all those other little business acumen and soft skills that really determines it's that. You know, I once had a conversation with a very famous actor, and he was telling me the difference between a $20 million movie actor and a $1 million movie actor was only 1 or 2%. But that 1 or 2% made them the best of the best. And honestly, once you get into like elite anything, if you go to the Olympics and you're looking at competitive swimmers, you know, the person that loses might be, you know, 100th of a second less than world record pace. So, I mean, once you get to the top, it's all the minutia, all those little things that truly matter. And that's why Alonzo and I are always talking about it, because people notice these things. I mean, right? Not everybody does, but the people that are going to hire you for these positions, they notice all of these details, and they are sticklers to these details. I can tell you at once, I used to wear Hugo Boss suits. My manager kind of treated me like, all right, man, I need a little more than you. And one day I lost my luggage and had to go buy a Canali suit, and it was the only thing that fit me off the rack. And he's like, oh, you were good today. So I bought a bunch of them and got a couple of promotions. I mean, it sounds crazy, and it is crazy. But once you get all the main stuff down, then it's the little things that matter. But we got to do the big things before the little things.
You know, another key thing, Mike, is that a lot of people, I can tell with some of the questions, don't go into an interview like you're a hard luck story just because you don't have years of experience. Go in there like you belong there. Go in there like you have earned your time. You have studied, you've gone through the paces with Go Cloud Careers or whatever trajectory where it landed you into a space of competency. You've done the work. You've been to the places, you've stayed up late nights, you've committed yourself, and you sacrificed things. Go in there like you belong there. And that is also going to lend to a air of personality that they need in those rooms with those clients. You're going to be representing a strong brand that no one is going there out of pity. They're going there because that client believes this organization has something to take them to the next level, maintain air or position of being a competitor in their industry and leading it. And the only people that they believe can make that happen is the company that you're working for, and they're going to send you. Let that sink in.
So I love what Alonzo said. Please ask your questions. But, you know, I want to bring into something of some of the conversations I've had with hiring managers over the years. One of them said, I need somebody that can do the job that I actually like. Another one said, Mike, I need someone that can do the job, make my life easy, that I can tolerate. So if you notice in all these conversations, the likability factor of the person is there. Who do we marry? Someone we like. Who do we hire? Someone we like. So think about that.
That makes a lot of sense, Mike.
It's just so important to be more likable.
Yeah, think about, would you want to hire someone that you can't stand being around, for 8 hours a day, 40 plus hours a week, 2,080 hours per year, and you're going to hire someone you don't like and can't stand and doesn't know the job.
You
Put it in
can't.
that perspective.
You can't. So if you think about things from their perspective, put yourself in their hat. Be empathetic about the situation. In fact, prior to every interview I ever go on, I learn about the person. Cyber stalk, if you will, open source investigation. Go out there and see what people put on social media, what other people said about them. Gives me some information so I can prepare how I'm going to present myself in a manner that'll be useful for them. Guess what? They appreciate the preparation because they know that if I'm prepared to meet with them, I'll be prepared to meet with their clients. So look at it from their perspective. When you understand someone's perspective, you can understand things. I can remember at one point in the family restaurant, we had a person that started coming in late every day and practically falling asleep on the job. And, one person was like, let's just fire this person. And I said, let me just see what's going on before I fired the person. So I asked, you look like you've been a little tired recently, you've been a little late recently, something going on in your life. And the person broke down in tears and said, yes, oh my God, we have this problem. I'm trying to help my kid. I'm working a second job. I'm barely able to sleep. Thank you so much for working with me. I only have to do this for like 3 months more. At the end of the day, I had a more solid relationship with that person. We kept them at the restaurant. And at the end of those 3 months, the person was back into themselves. So you got to understand what's going on. So try to see it from their perspective. I was able to see it from that person's perspective and convince the family, give them the break. They've always been good. But if I didn't see that side, I just would have seen a poor performer. So I always like to look at both sides of the equation. Something they made lawyers do many years ago, I don't know if they still do it now, but it was really good. They made them argue both sides of a case, the one they believed in and the other side, so they could learn to see things objectively, so they could learn to think like their opponent and to learn all of those kind of things. So think about how your client would work. And, if you don't believe me, read the Sun Tse book, spelled TSU, called The Art of War. And they say, if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you need not fear the results of 1,000 battles because you'll win each time. If you know yourself but not your enemy, for every win there'll be one loss. If you know your enemy but not yourself, for every win there'll be one loss. I hate to say this. Do you know how most people walk into an interview not knowing what the company they're applying for and not even knowing themselves? And that's why they struggle. Let's talk a little more tips. Chris initially brought up not interviewing for jobs that you're not ready for. And, it's one thing to stretch a little, and it's another thing to stretch a lot. So if you go and you interview for a job that you obviously can't do, they won't hire you, but they'll remember you wasted their time. And they may put a big, giant negative mark against your name that says, do not interview in the future. So when you go for an interview you can't, not only do you not get hired, but you burn your ability to interview with that client potentially in the future. And the worst part of it is, you go on an interview and they say no, and then you feel rejected, and it's not so good for your self-esteem and your confidence, which you absolutely, absolutely, absolutely must do. And you don't want to have a bad experience and have them spread the message to other people. Look at that interview I did. And then there's more people that are in your list of not hiring you. So go for what you can do. It's okay to stretch a little. It is. But don't stretch too much. Just make sure when you go on that interview, you can do the job, and you can show them you can do the job, and you can show them why they need you. Why they need you. Apple produces something and people buy it. They don't even know if they're going to use it for anything, but they'll buy it because it's coming from Apple and everybody believes it's going to be something awesome. Like, I love Apple. I got a house full of more Macs than you could think of. That's neither here nor there. But my phones, my iPads, I love it because it's simple for me to use, but they have that brand. I want you to have that brand. Your brand's not just about what you put on LinkedIn. It's about every interaction you have, what you do behind the scenes, all of that good stuff. So go over there. Prove to people why you're great. And if you have any last questions, please bring them forth. Otherwise, I think we'll end for the day.
From Kevin, when the interviewer asks, "Do you have any questions for me?" What sort of questions do you need to have ready?
Kevin, there's only one question I've ever asked the interviewer in my entire life, and is the following. Hiring manager, whatever, fill in their name. Could you tell me what your goals are and the company's goals? Because I want to know that if I was part of your team, I could help you be more successful in your goals and also help the company be more successful. That's the only question I ever ask. Because it gets me the real job description and it shows them that you are interested in solving their problem. Half of the rest of the questions that people have asked me, I was like, why are they asking me these questions? So I definitely don't go there.
From Diana, this present, okay, it's absolutely worth. Thank you so much. We are always happy to help you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And Igor asked, what do I mean by stretch a little? So Igor, we had a wonderful student from Jamaica, and that maybe reminds you of who he is. He's a great guy, but I don't want to use his exact story. And he went on his first solution architect interview, and they hired him as a senior solution architect versus just a solution architect. Let's face it, this guy, good friend, great guy, he could have easily been a solution architect or a senior solution architect. So the stretch was, it's his first architect job, and he got it as a senior solution architect. That's the stretch. He definitely could be an architect, and whether it's an architect or a senior architect, there's a little bit of a squishiness in there. So that's what I mean by a stretch. Now, if you'd applied for a chief architect role, that would be something that would be totally different. Hope that makes sense. And all you Go Cloud Couriers people know this really awesome guy because we all love him. So if you're not, just understand, sometimes we protect people's names in a public environment. So let me remind you of a few things. Have a completely free guide on how to win the interview. My team will pop it in the chat box and the link below. And then I'll get to the last question. So also on Thursday, we have a how to get your first enterprise architect job. Guess what? Come, it's free. We'll have a face-to-face conversation. And while we're at it, if you're looking for your first cloud architect job, we've got a free guide on how to do that as well. And it'll tell you all the skills you need to be an exceptional and hireable cloud architect. Now let's look at C. When preparing for hire, should you focus time on certifications, and how much should be spent on certifications before you start interviewing? See, let me put it this way. I can hire you with or without certifications. And I'm likely to hire you with or without certifications. Delroy Batt got hired with no cloud certifications as a cloud security architect after we trained him. So certifications will help you get an interview, but you got to win the interview. So the first thing I do, see, is prepare for the job. Only when I know I can do the job will I try to put myself out there, and that's when I'd start throwing the certifications. Because when you can do the job, passing these certifications is nothing, because these certifications barely scratch the surface of what we do. Now, if you try to do the certifications by themselves without learning the job, they are monstrously challenging, and they can be incredibly hard. So learn to do the job first. When you're ready to do the job, start putting your resume together, and maybe you'll get hired without any certifications, just because somebody sees your resume and likes it, and they interview you while you're working on the certifications. And then when you get those certifications, then pop it on your resume and then send it to different recruiters. So certifications for me are the last thing. But here's the business I'm in. If I was going to build a car from scratch, I would buy all the best parts because I'd want it to be awesome. I'd put them together by a qualified mechanic that could do it. And the last thing I would do would be to paint the car. Why? Because what's in the car matters more than its paint, because I could always pay to paint it. But more than that, the key is, was the paint going to get scratched along the way? What's going to happen if it's painted before you start putting the thing together? So if you do your certifications too early, they keep you from getting hired, because there's nothing in the certifications that are going to get you hired. But After the paint, you put a nice coat of wax on that thing, you buff it up, and it's now a shiny superstar. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to build the perfect car to whatever your desires are. Make it strong and capable with all the best stuff. Then paint it. And certifications are what I consider to be the paint and the polish. So yes, they're important as they'll help you get interviews, but certifications themselves will never get you hard unless it's the CCIE exam. Because that one, you have to prove you're competent to pass it. So that's why it's polished. Paint the car last. If you build that car house, paint it last after you've done everything. So paint is the finishing touches. So it should be the last thing. And honestly, if you know how to do these things, it'll be easy. For example, if I knew nothing about cloud computing technology and I had attempted to pass the Google Professional Cloud Architect exam, which I did, that would have been a 6 months to a year to pass that exam because it was tough. Knowing the network and the data center and the cloud like I did, I spent 2 days preparing for the exam and easily passed it because I already knew. So certification is the last bit, and it'll be very easy if you understand all the skills of the job anyway. If you try to learn the certification without the skills, not only you're not hireable, none of it will make sense, and you're going to have to start learning from the beginning anyway. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, and if you got them, please ask them now. Alonzo and I will get back to our days. We love coming out. We want to help. And as long as there's questions, we're willing to do it. But if you guys are quiet today or shy, or we've given you so many things to think about it, that is okay too. Just take advantage of the free interview guide. Share this information with the friends so maybe you can help others get hired on their interview. Download the free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job guide. And join us on the free webinar on Thursday. Take care, everyone.
Take care. And remember, you can be a cloud architect and an enterprise architect with the right training.
Absolutely. You can be anything you want with the right training, especially a cloud architect or enterprise architect, two of my favorite jobs in the entire world. Take care, everyone.
Have a good one.